Hi, my name is Aaron Engelman from Two Teachers Tax Service here in Lyman, South Carolina. Today, we're going to talk about the increased standard deduction for seniors provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of 2025. Since 2018 and the enactment of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, the vast majority of taxpayers have chosen the standard deduction over itemizing for two main reasons: simplicity and a significantly higher standard deduction. In fact, 90% of the taxpayers take the standard deduction rather than itemize. In addition, seniors over 65 have enjoyed an additional deduction of $2,000 for singles and head of household, or an additional deduction of $1,600 for married filing separately, or $3,200 for married filing jointly taxpayers. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act temporarily adds an additional deduction to provide greater tax relief. So what exactly does this law do? The OBBBA raises the standard deduction for taxpayers over 65 by $6,000 for singles and $12,000 for married filers who are both 65 or older. Also, this additional deduction can be combined with an itemized deduction for those taxpayers who choose to itemize. This may provide savings beyond the existing standard deduction, itemized deduction, and senior additional deduction for single and married filers meeting this age requirement. Here's how this law might affect you. I would like to take you through a comparison of a hypothetical couple age 65 or older with adjusted gross income of $100,000. What kind of savings might they see? So if you and your spouse generally file married filing jointly and have adjusted gross income of $100,000, your federal taxes might look like this. So an AGI of $100,000 minus the standard deduction of $31,500 minus the senior deduction of $3,200 gives you taxable income of $65,300. The tax on $65,300 for married filing jointly is $7,359. Now, let's do the calculation with the additional standard deduction for seniors. So again, the AGI is $100,000 minus the standard deduction of $31,500 minus the senior deduction of $3,200 minus the additional deduction of $12,000 gives you taxable income of $53,300. The tax on $53,300 for married filing jointly is $5,919 for a savings of $1,440. Now, some taxpayers will not see any changes to their taxes. Well, how can this be? Let's talk about this. If you and your spouse generally file married filing jointly and have adjusted gross income of $33,000, your federal taxes might look like this: AGI of $33,000, standard deduction $31,500, so we subtract that. A senior deduction of $3,200 gives us taxable income of $0. And of course, the tax on $0 for married filing jointly is $0. Now let's do the calculation with the additional standard deduction for seniors, and we can see where this is going. An AGI of $33,000 minus the standard deduction of $31,500 minus the senior deduction of $3,200 minus the additional deduction of $12,000 still gives us taxable income of $0. And tax on $0 for married filing jointly still is $0. And so there's no savings in this instance. Now, what if I itemize? If you and your spouse generally file married filing jointly, itemize, and have adjusted gross income of $100,000, your federal taxes might look like this. So Again, we have an AGI of $100,000 minus $38,000 in itemized deductions minus the additional deduction of $12,000 gives you taxable income of $50,000. The tax on $50,000 for married filing jointly is $5,523. Without the additional $12,000 deduction, you would have taxable income of $62,000 and a tax burden of $69.63, which is an additional $1,440 in taxes. So the increased standard deduction for seniors policy is one of many temporary provisions in the broader OBBBA. It may or may not provide a tax benefit to you depending on your situation. If you have questions, we are a phone call or email away. Contact us at 269-449-8277 or by email at 2teacherstax@gmail.com. Thank you.